of Season 2. Not a whole lot of news this week. Some outcries, I think, and some very interesting events. In this show, I mainly want to talk about crunches that are happening within the gaming industry. They are somewhat of a problem, and they've been coming to light with recent articles like the BioWare article and the Epic Games article, and then recently a Riot in Netherlands Studios article that came out towards the end of last month, since we are now in May. Other than that, Borderlands 3 gameplay was shown off, and again, just some small news. So, starting always, we're going to get right into that with esports. So, currently in League of Legends, MSI is happening, and play-ins is currently going on. So, in Group B, Vega Squadron is 2-0, followed by Detonation Focus Me, which is 1-1. Then Mega Esports, which are tied for second who are 1-1, and Enzo Esports Club, which is 0-2. In Group A, Fongvu Buffaloes are 5-2. 1907 Fenoblis Espor. Is that a misspell? Are 4-3, my bad. And Boomers and Insur Gaming are 2 wins, 4 losses. We now know that in the play-in knockouts, it will be Team Liquid versus Fongvu Buffaloes, and whoever wins that goes on to the finals for play-in knockouts, and then they can move on to group stages, which currently still group stages are just SKT, G2, and Invictus Gaming. In the Overwatch League, as always, at the time of recording this, they are currently playing. It is currently Boston Uprising versus Los Angeles Gladiators. But in the standings, San Francisco is first, followed by Los Angeles Gladiators, then Vancouver, then New York, then London, then Dallas, then Hangzhou Spark, then Seoul Dynasty. That's the stage playoff cutoff point. Then we have Shanghai Dragons, Chengdu Hunters, Philadelphia, Boston, Atlanta, Paris, Los Angeles Valiants, Guangzhou Chargers, Toronto, Washington Justice, Houston, and Florida is last. In terms of game releases, last month, as last show, Days Gone By came out. We now know a little bit about that. Again, I think it's, like I said last show, it's something kind of sleep on. Apparently, it's very similar to Far Cry series, and it has like 60 hours plus of story, but the story's kind of bland, so you're not really playing it for the story or anything like that. You're just playing it to explore the open world, much like Far Cry. The other kind of under the radar, I think, really big release is Final Fantasy XII, The Zodiac Age, which is the remake for Final Fantasy XII, which came out on the PS2. Came out on the Xbox One and Switch. This game, I've done some research. I was definitely on my list, and this game is one of the top 3 Final Fantasies always ranked, followed by 6 and 7, of course. So I definitely want to play it, and of course, in case you play Final Fantasy XIV, the MMO, the raid for the 24-man for Stormblood is actually inspired by Final Fantasy XII. And of course, the bunny people that we're getting next expansion are also, I think, believe from that game. But in terms of May releases, most notably, May 14th will be Rage 2 will be coming out. Another Yakuza game comes out on PC May 9th. We have Life is Strange 2 Episode 3 coming out on May 9th as well. And then, of course, later on this month is a bunch of Resident Evil remakes for the Switch. Resident Evil 4, and Resident Evil 0 for the Switch. And then after that, kind kind of somewhat slow releases, really. So, in terms of news, Peter Mayhaw, actor of Chewbacca, has passed away at 71. He was fantastic, actor, and I'm really sad to see him go because Star Wars is one of my favorite series. So, yeah, I send his family my condolences, and it's sad to see him go. Dragon Age 4 is now BioWare's main focus after Anthem's lead creator leaves to work on Dragon Age 4. So, it kind of sounds like to me that BioWare's kind of abandoning Anthem, as they probably should, because it was a complete flop, and they're moving on to work on Dragon Age 4. And hopefully they've learned after failing 2 times in a row. That's all you can hope for. Epic, of course, making some more major news. This time, not really pissing off the Fortnite community, but buying the studio that makes Rocket League. So that's interesting. Epic has been really stirring the pot recently in terms of the PC gaming market. And who knows where this will go. And Steam is, yet to respond. Moving on, the Razer toaster lives. Yes, that is right. If you are a fan of the infamous meme of the Razer toaster, you can now buy it, and they are making it. So I thought that was really funny when I saw that article. Now, of course, probably the low-key big news of this week is Sonic, the live-action movie that they announced earlier this week. It looks fucking awful, and I don't need to speak for it. Sonic looks disgusting. I've never been a Sonic fan, but that thing is actually fucking disgusting. So bad that they released a statement. The director released a statement today saying that they were going to redesign Sonic because he's so nasty looking. Yeah, so in other Sega news, they're trying to port more Sonic games to the PC. Really, this is Sega's last, I seen, power play, because all they really have for it was maybe like Sonic and Mega Man's Capcom. So good luck, Sega. That's all I can say. I think Detective Pikachu actually came out this week as well. I had to look, and I'm pretty sure it did pretty well in the box offices. Yes, it did. Oh no, my bad. It will release next Friday, and I'm pretty sure it's gotten good reviews from what I've heard. Which is good because it's gotten some low-key hype, and I think it's really could be a really actually funny movie. But of course, we'll talk about that more next week. So let's get into the Borderlands gameplay, right? Borderlands did a live action event where they invited streamers to play their game. Of course, there's been a little bit of drama about this game. Other than that big game store, it has to do with microtransactions, but we'll get into that too in a second. So it was an hour. So they showed it off for an hour, and then you can watch other streamers just play through the demo and explore it. So if you always want more, you can always go check it out. I have not looked at the legendaries or any spoiler things like that. I just wanted to see the gameplay and just how it ran and just what direction they were going with. And the direction that they really went with was, of course, bigger is better. So it's Borderlands 2, taking the good things from the pre-sequel and just blown up to bigger proportions. So I'll give you my thoughts after we get right into it. So the story of the game is to stop the Callisto twins, I believe, and their new cult, the cult of the Children of the Vault, from getting to a vault, and the female Callisto twin can absorb other people's strengths and powers. So she wants to open the vault and absorb the strength of the vault creatures. And of course, you being a vault hunter want to get there first and somewhat stop her. So that's the entire story of the game. some of the cool little aspects is that loot now scales with your level, and so does damage. So if I'm level 30 or whatever, and my level 25 friend joins, the loot will scale for him, or vice versa, or the loot will scale for me, so it'll scale down for me, so I can use the same loot. And the damage that I deal to bad guys will also not be, it will scale down, so I'm not just one-shotting them. Of course, you can turn this feature off, but it's actually a really nice feature. I also believe that loot is like not hoarded, so everyone kind of gets their own loot pool, so you're not fighting over all the loot, which is really nice. They mentioned a new element, which is radiation, which if they die to radiation, then they just explode or something like that. Other than that, of course, we've gone over this, like the guns alternative fire modes. You can now slide, climb ledges, and all that shit. You know, that's the classic kind of into the modern era first-person shooter serial deal. Each character will now have 3 action skills. So instead of you just playing the Siren and having one ability the entire time, you now have 3 that you can pick and choose, with the exception of I forgot his name, the new stealth type character, Zero, the new type of Zero character, who can equip 2 action skills at once. So the Siren, they only showed off really the Siren, and Zero, I keep the stealth character for this game. Siren has a phase grasp similar to Maya's from Borderlands 2. Sort of a ground slam sort of thing, and a projection self where she like projects herself spiritually like fucking Doctor Strange or something like that. The new stealth character, of course, he can equip 2. He has a digiclone similar to the assassin from Borderlands 2, except he can now teleport between it. He can have a sentinel, a little drone that you throw out, it flies around and shoots shit. And then you have a barrier that you throw down, and it will amplify your damage or add to certain elements depending on what you're shooting through it. That's kind of the gist. The other one being that there's Sanctuary 2 now, which is a spaceship, because of course, as we kind of predicted, you are traveling between worlds. So you're not only on Pandora anymore, you're traveling to multiple planets, which is kind of cool. So my thoughts on it is that it looks really good. I'm happy that they stayed true to Borderlands, and they decided to build up from what they had going for it and what really worked. I didn't really like the presentation. I think that those like co-ops, like I'll go right, you go left, kind of serious conversations just don't really work, and they're overused, and I'm tired of seeing stuff like that, especially on E3, and they're kind of cringy. It's kind of set up, but yeah, other than that, the game looks really good. All the different types of weapons and different types of experiments you can do looks really good. I wish they showed off skill trees just a little bit more, other than just the abilities, but like the ways the abilities can be augmented. I wish they showed off the new elementals, because it can't be just radiation. They showed off a couple mini boss fights, which were really cool, but their main focus, and I think their main selling point is again how cool the weapons can be, and just how big and explosive and fantastic just the loot. Like, they really showed off the like the Torg weapons, not the Torg, the other brand, which like when I throw them, something happens. So they really showed that off, of course, with the guns with legs, because that was a huge marketing thing for them. So, and I didn't look at the legendaries. I know they showed off some legendaries, but I didn't look at them because I want to kind of somewhat be surprised. It depends the drop rate. I remember OG Borderlands, I think my first playthrough, like I never saw legendaries, and then eventually they buffed them, or like, and then you could see legendary drops a little bit more. But on my playthroughs, they were pretty fucking rare, and the only way I would really see them is that if someone came in and just kind of like spewed them all out in like a lobby or something like that. So that's pretty much the gist of Borderlands. If I'm gonna buy it, I think I'm until release date comes around, depending on how big it is, depending on what the Epic Games Store does. Currently, my standings are that I will not pick it up, just because I would rather have it on Steam than the Epic Games Store, just because Steam has more benefits than the Epic Games Store right now. But we will see. It really depends on the game. Also, right, before I forget, the microtransactions. In the stream, Randy Pittsburgh, which has been tweeting up a storm, same with the CEO of Epic. They've just been going on a rampage on Twitter, supposedly. He says that there will be no microtransactions in this game. That's somewhat of a lie. Supposedly, there's microtransactions, but only cosmetic microtransactions, not pay to win, give yourself a boost microtransactions, even though that's kind of in the game with if you pre-order buy the deluxe edition or whatever the fuck, you get some sort of XP loot booster. But this was also in Borderlands 2, where you had an item that gave you 5% more loot, but it wasn't that big of a deal. So we'll see. I just really hope it's not overpriced. Game developers kind of have to do this, especially to stay afloat, because 2K or Gearbox, for instance, I believe, they came on Borderlands 3, then they did that Overwatch clone that flopped, and now they have to do this, so they have to add something just to keep the company going. It's sad, but it's just the times we live in, really. So, moving on to what I really want to talk about and the main topic. This is probably going to be a short show because there's not a whole lot to say here. I just wanted people to be really aware of this. Crunches. So, crunches, if you don't know, are basically you're forced to work a certain amount of hours in order to meet a deadline. Just so you know, this news kind of started out with why Anthem failed and how these developers were kind of forced to work absurd hours and absurd conditions in order to meet their deadline for Anthem. And it's there's aspects of it in that article, but it's not really there. It's more about how Anthem failed. Moving on a little bit to the end of this month, we had 3 kind of big articles. The first one being the Epic Games article, which I don't think I mentioned last week. So when Fortnite blew up, Epic was forced to hire, more staff. And Fortnite team went from like maybe 50 people to now like 100 fucking people plus, right? It doubled. And these developers, right? I want to make it clear that's developers, are forced to work 60-hour work weeks a day. That's like 16 hours a day. Or 16-hour work weeks. Yeah, so that's 16 hours a day. And if of course, they're not like forced to do it, but it's kind of like, if you don't do it, we'll fire you. Or if you don't do it, somebody else will get all the work. And like, so it's not like, oh, you don't have to do it, but culture-wise, we expect you to do it. So these developers are grinding their ass off, and it gets even worse because, they give up their social lives, They have to, they give up taking care of themselves. So they just burn out, and they just have to go, and it's absolutely terrible. And I highly recommend that you go read these articles, because in my opinion, I think that it would be perfectly okay if game developers unionize, because in that article, the Epic Games article, they talk about how they get around people with using contractors. So they just hire them as contractors, and that allows them to let them go. And if they don't do it, then they'll fire them or whatever, right? And the biggest thing for me is that there was a statement in that our Epic Games article that management was basically entitled to keep Fortnite as popular as long as possible, to keep it up at the top of the food chain. And we can see this because if you look at Fortnite right now, people are pissed and people are stopped playing, especially the competitive community, competing in this $30 World Cup, where they removed the FOV, they removed stretch res and will not give players an FOV slider for some fucking reason, where they removed ciphering, which is a change I understand, but at least upgrade like the mats in pubs so we can have more mats. And they keep making negative changes and adding more content, like this endgame event, over improving their game. And the last time they actually made positive changes for the game was when Apex Legends was on top, and it's a legit competitor. So it's sad to see that happen to Epic. But that's not only that company. Crunches are happening at Riot Games, right? Where they also have to meet a mandatory 2-week new patch update or new content update every 2 weeks, like Fortnite does. Every 2 weeks, Fortnite has an update. Every 2 weeks, League of Legends has an update. And apparently this Monday, Epic Games employees are scheduling a walkout because it's not just the crunches that are happening there where they're have to work like absurd work hours, but it's the culture there where Epic Games had like a very bro culture. We saw this a couple months ago with like how they treat females at Riot, and so a lot of the employees are just not happy with just how the culture is there, and it actually sounds really fucking weird and not really a culture that would be befitting of a work environment. So they're definitely having their share of problems, and companies, because they're not, these game devs aren't unionized, they can't really fight back, and they don't really have a voice, and like they can't sue the company or anything like that because of contracts, and they don't have a voice. And that's why I say they definitely should probably unionize, and so they can have these benefits of saying, hey, you're fucking us over, we don't like the work conditions, we're not gonna work. And if I don't get my games because of that, I'm fine, because that's more quality over quantity, and what I really want out of anything is quality, which is why I see these Japanese games, and I always advocate for Japanese developers because the quality of their games are so much better. So that's happening on Riot. I think that the company tried to talk to the developers who are going to walk out. So while they're like, okay, put your names on a list, which is not good, and we're going to divide and conquer, kind of talk to you in small groups. So I hope things get better there, of course. Same goes for Epic. We could just see how bad management is. And it's not just that, but then we move over to Neverland Studios, which just came out with Mortal Kombat 11. And I'm a DePaul student, so a lot of DePaul graduates, especially in the game design department, actually go work there because they're based here in Chicago. And apparently the developers over there are dealing with crunches, having to work really hard to meet the deadlines or whatever. And that game, of course, it was apparently a really good fighting game, but again, because I guess management decisions, was plagued with microtransactions, and it would take you a pain in the ass to really grind up all the skins. For closure, I have not read the Epic Games report, and I have not read the Neverland Studio report, but I know of it, and I know of the problems that they are facing. So, all in all, I want to just bring this to everyone's attention. This is again, you have to understand that this is not the developers. A lot of people get that mixed up. I see when I say all these fucking these fucking devs are fucking things over. These are not the developers. This is management. This is who's telling the developers XYZ. We want more microtransactions. Developers have to put that in. That's not the developers. So if there's anyone to be mad at, it's Fortnite management. It's Riot Games management. It's Neverland Studios management. And I think that's why the developers should unionize, because these companies are using loopholes to abuse the system and to abuse their staff. And we see in the Epic article that if people don't comply, get rid of them, get a new person. And it's really sad to see. That's going to conclude this week's show. Next week should be our Endgame show, going over Avengers Endgame, thoughts about it with a new guest, hopefully. I still have to plan everything out. If you want to listen to past shows, all of our past shows are up on our YouTube channel. You can also listen to our current shows on Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Google Podcasts. Make sure to check out our website, itsnotasport.com, and follow us on social media. Our Instagram, it's not a sport to you. Anyway, and of course, catch us live each week at around 7 p.m. Central Time on twitch.tv/saltywaffles, where if you come, you can always ask me questions and voice your opinions on the topics that we will be talking about on this week's show or last week's show. Anyway, that concludes this week's show. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope you're smashing those noobs and climbing the ladders.